So in this video, I'm going to introduce you to the Build Your Own Bargello range. Either you've bought a kit or you're thinking about doing it, and I want to show you the full process. At the bottom underneath the video, you'll see there's some timestamps. And basically, if you've bought a certain design, there's bits of the video that you'll find it useful to refer to. But I'd recommend just watching this first section, because I'm going to talk you through the technique and how the instructions work. First, what I'm going to do is unbox a kit with you so you can see all the materials you've got in your kit. So here is your kit. Your kit all comes neatly packaged inside these beautiful tubes. When you open it up, you'll see that it says the title along the top of the design you've ordered. And as you open it up, you have a large instruction sheet that contains inside it all the wool, the canvas, the needles, and a little instruction booklet. So I'm going to separate out my wools. You can see the piece of canvas here with some tapestry needles in the corner. And then there's a little instruction booklet which talks you through the various stitches. So first things first, when you get your kit, what you're going to want to do is sort out the wool. So here I'm showing you the different wools, how they sort to each colour palette. So we're starting here with the pinks. And you just want to familiarise yourself with which number wool relates to which actual colour. And I'll show you this now for each of the different colour palettes. So here's the blues. And now you have it here for the yellows. And finally for the greens. Once you've sorted out your wool, the next step you need to do is to mark out your canvas. Now here I'm showing you how to mark out the canvas for a lumbar cushion, but just follow, if you're doing a square, you'll be measuring out 40 by 40 centimetres. So first I'm just using a normal pen and a ruler and I'm marking out the overall width of the cushion, 65 centimetres. I'm just going to draw along a line. I'm trying to keep that line going directly along the actual lines of the canvas itself, but don't worry if it's a little bit uneven. And then I'm going to go down the side and I'm going to measure out my 30 centimetres. You can see there's quite a lot of excess canvas here, and that's because we want to enable you enough excess to be able to make yours up into a cushion. But also it means if you've slightly mismeasured here and so yours is slightly smaller, you're not going to end up running into trouble. So this is purely enabling you're marking out your territory and where you want to stitch. Once you've got your rectangle fully stitched, then where all the stitching guides start is the top left corner. So now I just want to talk you through the stitches themselves. So I've got one strand of wool, I've threaded it through my needle and I've tied a knot in the end. And I'm going to show you the different lengths of stitches. So I'll start from the back of the canvas and pull the needle up to the front with the knot on the back side. And then I pass the needle back through the canvas. With this stitch, I've brought the needle forward one hole, so it's a one hole stitch. Whereas this next stitch, you see I'm going forward two holes, so this is a two hole stitch. And likewise, the next one, I'll go up and I'll go across three holes, so it's a three hole stitch. So effectively, a three hole stitch covers in total 4 holes, but it's all about how many stitches do you move forward. As you can see, I'm always starting in the same place that I last stitched from. And part of this is just to build a bit of volume. 3, 4, and so 5 I'm holes, circling the needle back and forth. You don't have to do this consistently, but when you are stitching, and then don't worry about trying to conserve wool. You've got loads of wool in your kit, and so stitch in quite a full manner. So you can see here again, I'm just going to show you close up this one hole stitch point. So that is a one hole stitch because I'm moving forward one hole. And this is of relevance when you come to your plans, and you'll see that I refer to a 2-hole stitch or a 4-hole stitch. And that means I'm stitching in this manner where I'm moving forward, say here, 1, 2, 3 holes. Once you get the hang of this, it's really straightforward and it becomes very intuitive. Now, one thing I just wanted to show you here is how you can so easily move between sections. Don't feel like you have to finish your thread off each time you finish stitching. You can jump around between sections in the way that I'm doing now. And so here I'm doing a series of stitches in a row over in a different area. And if I want to run some stitches alongside each other, you see how I go into the same hole as previous stitches. And these are all 4-hole length stitches, which is a very common stitch length we use in our kits. So you start to see how your stitches are going to start covering up the canvas quite quickly. Now, if you find you put a stitch in, but you put it in the wrong length, the key thing when unpicking is try not to feed the thread back through, but instead you see I just unthreaded the wool from the needle there and I used the reverse of the needle just to pull that stitch back out, rethread the needle and carry on. If you try to go back up through a hole, inevitably you'll get yourself in knots. So you're going to just keep stitching in this manner until you have about kind of 5 centimetres of thread left on your needle. And then what I want to show you how to do is how to finish your thread. So I'm going to turn over and work on the reverse. And when I have finished stitching, all I do is I run my needle under the stitches on the back. I run it under enough to secure the wool. And once it's secure, I can trim. So that's your stitching approach. We're now just going to go into each guide. So first I'm starting with the simplest one, which is our flame design. And this is the simplest because you're using 1 stitch length throughout the entire design. What you do is you stitch a single line throughout the design and you use that as your guide. And you can see here, these are all 4-hole stitch lengths. So let's look at this alongside the plan. So I have my plan here and you can see I've marked a starting point which matches to the reverse side of the instructions, a single line. So I'm going to start my stitching with 4-hole stitch lengths following this line. Once you have the first line in, the design just repeats, and so it's incredibly straightforward to start building up from. So the key thing is take your time getting the counting on the first line right, and the rest will all fall into place. Next up, I'm talking about the feathers. And so in the feathers, we use predominantly 4-hole stitch length again. And it's built up of these repeating diamond patterns. So you can see here, the vast majority is 4-hole length, with the exception of a few varying sizes just in this area of each diamond. So again, we're just going to show you on the stitch plan. You can see this section here matches up to the stitch plan. You can stitch this however it suits, but what I recommend is starting with the larger diagonals. So picking the first line and starting to stitch down, as you can see here. This helps provide you with a guideline for where your next diamonds are going to go. Once you've got that in place, then I start adding in these smaller diamonds. And so you then can build up within the smaller diamonds to start building up the entire design. You don't have to stitch the grid across the entire piece first. You might find it best just to do a small area, almost like that quarter I've got drawn there. Do whatever suits you. If you want to stitch the whole way across, absolutely go ahead. So next up is the lanterns. So the lanterns is our next in level, and this uses a combination of 4 hole length and 8 hole length stitches. But it's a small repeating pattern, so once you've got the first one done, it's very straightforward. So you can see here, there's some 8 hole length stitches and some 4 hole length stitches, and I'm just using a combination of them. So again, I'm going to compare this design now against the stitch plan. So you can see I'm starting in the same place again as this design. I've got the top corner done here. And what I'm going to start with is I'm starting with this dark blue outline. So if you see on the reverse of the instructions, I'll show you which areas I recommend beginning with. So I recommend starting to stitch with this large outline. And again, just count really carefully as you go, getting the combination of 8 hole length and 4 hole lengths right. Once you've got that correct, it's really simple filling in the other colours because you have a reference point. So this design is quite a straightforward one to follow because you just have to make sure you get your first bit of the grid correct and then you'll match the rest up. So next up, we're going on to the weave, and this is one of our more advanced designs because it uses a large variety of different stitch lengths, but it's still relatively simple once you get into it. So the design is made up of these 2 bands. I have horizontal stitch bands here combined with a vertical stitch weave. So what we start doing is we begin by stitching the vertical bands, and then we'll stitch the section across. So I start with this vertical, I then stitch the weave between them using the vertical as a reference point, and then I'll stitch the other vertical. So you can see that here. And what I do is when you start on the vertical band, I recommend doing the interwoven lines first because they help you place the band. When you're doing the weave, this is all made up of 3 hole stitch lengths. And then all you do is you fill the gap with 4 hole stitch lengths. So get your vertical band in place first, and then the rest of the design really will fall into place. When you are filling in the background, you'll end up using a bit of a random assortment of short stitches just to fill the gaps. Don't worry about that. Finally, the Florentine. And this is our most advanced pattern. This involves using a combination of 6 hole length and 2 hole length stitches. It's complicated because it uses a combination of these 2 stitch lengths in a design with a very large repeat. But the thing to bear in mind is each vertical line of stitching is 2 6 hole, then 2 2 hole, then 2 6 hole, then 2 2 holes. So bear that in mind. And you can see here I have the first top corner done of the design. So in order to get this design right, much like the flame, I'm going to recommend you first just get a single line in the entire way across your cushion. So here I've started with the central single line. Carefully count it, knowing you're using a combination of 2 hole and 6 hole lengths, and then build your design out from there. Now, if you do make a mistake in this design, really don't worry. It's going to be so hard for anyone to see it. But the key thing is try get your first line correct, and then the rest will work. It creates this amazing design because you have both the Florentine pattern with the diagonal weaves from the 2 varying stitch lengths. So this is definitely a design which requires a bit more focus, but it's so worth the effort. So there is your Bargello range. I hope you enjoy it, and watch out because it is terribly addictive. And don't forget to check out all our finishing materials to go along with your cushion. Enjoy!